Yeah.
Yeah. Getting money like cashier. Get the money like a cashier. Customer, clientele. I was broke, that was last year. Getting money like cashier. Get the money like a cashier. Benjamin.
Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Dope Black Thoughts Live. My name's Kevin.
Hi, I'm Stefania.
Hey.
We just got the duo today.
Hey, look, that's all right. That's all right. The power duo.
That's right. We'll call this the A team.
Exactly. So if anyone else hops on, you know they're not a member of the A team. So don't worry about it, okay?
We'll hold everybody down tonight.
So okay. So we had a guest lined up. We didn't get a chance to do advertising for him. So we want to hold off on him because we didn't get an opportunity to really just decompress about the Chauvin case. So, you know, the man who murdered George Floyd. So I just want to, you know, one, give you the opportunity to jump in there on it, and I'm gonna take my sweet time jumping in and kind of breaking down how I felt about it too.
Yeah.
Give me some of your thoughts.
This is I'm glad you brought that up because we got to take the pulse of the community. You know, where we live, it hits a little close to home because we did have an event where we've had a police death by police here in this state. So, you know,
the Elijah McClain case.
Yeah, I was conflicted. I have to tell you, I knew all along that I wanted to see a guilty verdict, but as they were reading the verdict, my heart just sank, and on a few levels, I don't know why, but just watching his face as they read the verdict, my heart sank. But I knew that it was the right verdict. They needed to find him guilty, and I was so happy that they found him guilty. I know that we didn't get a take. We were waiting to exhale, and we didn't quite get that exhale because right on the heels of that, we hear the news of a 16-year-old child who was shot in the chest 4 times by a police officer, which then again, the stress starts all over again for Black people. You know, when do we get to take a breath? When do we get to exhale?
Yeah, they're still protesting from Dante Wright during that time. Everything's overlapping each other. So it's never just, oh, well, it's all about George Floyd. It's never just about George Floyd. Right. It's about white supremacy. It's about the systemic effects of racism. And, you know, when I think about systemic racism, I don't think police are racist. That's not what I'm thinking. I'm thinking the way that we are policed tends to break in a way. It tends to break towards Black and brown bodies. And I'm just living as a Black man. Black men have a harsher outcome, you know, when it comes to any sort of a police interaction. Obviously, Black women, Black people just have a worse outcome. So on so many times that I have to say there's racism in the system, you know, and if I'm not willing to say that, I'm not willing to engage with reality. So one, I put myself in Derek Chauvin's shoes. Okay. So let's just say I walk up, I'm Officer Smiley, aka the enforcer, right? So I come up there and the perp isn't cooperating, and I'm going to make sure he does what he needs to do. If he's not doing what I need him to do, and I have to get a little bit tough, that's one thing. But kneeling on someone's neck for you know, let's just call it 10 minutes. You know, if you're kneeling on someone's neck for 10 minutes, you are kind of premeditating. You are really thinking about it. You have tons of time to think. That's not a split-second decision. Right. I have a hard job, and my life is on the line every day. I have to think: should I pull my gun, or should I pull my taser? Should I try to wrestle him, or should I just try to shoot, or should I run away and get cover and call for backup? Like, that's a split-second decision. But 10 minutes into this, you have so much time to think and realign and you know, regroup. That it's there. I have no way to give you anything other than a guilty verdict. And I put it to myself as a truck driver. You know, if I go down that mountain at 80 miles an hour because my brakes are out, and I pass all the runaway truck ramps, and I'm doing it for 10 minutes, and they're just flying by me, and then eventually I crash into a car and kill a family of 5, I think it's on me.
Yeah, we had that happen here in Colorado as well. I think with the George Chauvin, I don't know why I keep doing that, but with the Derek Chauvin case, you're right. He had plenty of time to rethink his thought process in what he was doing, and he also had coaching from the sideline. There were people that were standing there that were telling him, get off his neck. He can't breathe. Get off his neck. He didn't shift his weight. And as a matter of fact, he doubled down on his weight to shift it to put more pressure on his neck.
Almost like it was his duty to put as much pressure on that neck as possible.
Yeah.
And, there was someone that did a very disgusting reenactment / experiment to see if it was really a knee on the neck that killed George Floyd. Stephen Crowder. If you guys in the world watching that have ever heard of Stephen Crowder, don't give him another click. Look at someone else who covers him doing the experiment, and basically just trying to say that, look, I got on the ground and someone kneeled on my neck, and the dude that kneeled on his neck, the angle of his femur was like so level. He put more pressure on his back, and there's pictures of Chauvin. He's almost standing up on his knee, his femur is pointed down at maybe a 30-degree angle to transfer as much weight as possible. And he even was putting his hand on his leg almost to brace himself on that neck. And I would think, even if it didn't hurt the breathing, just because I watch so much combat sports, there's serious neck damage going on. Nervous system injury is going on. Yeah. You're hurting that person no matter what. Even if they could breathe, you'd be hurting their neck. I can't get past it. There's nothing other than guilty I could give them, and that's on everything. But at the same time, if reality comes crashing on you when you realize, this man's going to prison, with a whole lot of people that can't stand cops, and he's the Derek Chauvin. It's gonna be tough.
It's good to see y'all. How y'all doing?
Brother Omar.
It's good to be here. It seemed like y'all have started the discussion, and Kevin, you said something that I was just recently on the radio show. We need to eradicate policing. We need to get rid of policing and begin to look at public safety. That doesn't mean get rid of law enforcement. That means law enforcement officers need to change their approach from policing to it being a public safety model. And looking at the individual first. Is everyone safe? Is everyone okay? And I give you a prime example of the difference between policing and public safety. Remember when the Aurora police officer was at the stoplight, and although they smelled alcohol, they treated it like a public safety issue. This guy having a medical crisis. Let's get him to the hospital and make sure he is okay. Everyone should be afforded that same type of service when it comes to our law enforcement community. And I know some law enforcement officers that do that, where they look at the health of the person. Is this person okay, before going to those extreme measures of seeing what laws have you broken, so I can either give you a citation or figure out how to control the situation. We have to have a totally different mindset of what public safety look like and what law enforcement look like, or we're going to have keep seeing protests, or we're going to see some type of rebellion within our community.
Yeah, which is sad, which we don't want to see. And I know that we have House Bill 217, correct? That hit, late last year, which does a lot of corrective actions for police officers. They now, must wear their body-worn cameras. They have to activate them if they are caught deactivating them in the midst of a stop. That can be grounds for termination. So we've taken a lot of strides here in Colorado in trying to correct the action, which is really just correcting the mentality of a police officer, helping him to stay in line. And we know that there are so many good police officers out there. It's the bad ones that we're trying to weed out. And that's why the change in policing, I agree, needs to happen.
A good one can become a bad one if the philosophy of law enforcement is still the same.
True. But, and they can't just be running a pack. Because so many times we see how when there's a call that goes out, there's one officer, he calls for backup. The others, without coming up and assessing the situation, just jump right in and start behaving the same way or in a certain
Mob mentality.
Exactly. And each one of them needs to assess the situation and be willing to tell their fellow officer, you can't do this.
Hey, let's talk about that thin blue line too.
Yeah.
Though, because they hate that stop snitching, but they sure want to respect that thin blue line. And what exactly does that thin blue line represent? I think that thin blue line is the embodiment of stop snitching for police. If you see a bad cop, you're a good cop, and you stay a good cop as long as you don't say anything about that bad cop over there. And we got to stop that. You're not a good cop if you don't report a bad one.
My good friend Paperboy got that look on, so I know he got something to say. I seen him give that look like 3 times. Then he sit and he said, "Okay."
Did he hold the finger up yet?
We got something.
Hit him.
No. This just what I would say at this point is, especially when you kind of hit him with that mob mentality and the cops calling back up. It's the model that we've been talking about the whole time I've been talking about. It's the citizen soldier. If the officers were part of the community, then it wouldn't be us versus them. Of course, a cop's going to call backup in a situation. Mm-hmm. But because in their mind and because the way that policing is done, it's me as the police officer versus the neighborhood versus but if police officers started thinking of themselves as citizens first, right? Police officers second, a lot of that wouldn't happen. You wouldn't have an officer coming into a neighborhood that he knows nothing about, making a snap judgment. And then things go down because he would know what Elijah's.
Derek Chauvin knew George Floyd.
Now, see, and I think what Omar saw on my face was, and I understand how we are engrossed with that trial. I understand. One, I have no interest in watching them kill George Floyd over and over and over again. I just have none.
Okay.
2, you guys know what my profession is. I knew what Chauvin's lawyer was going to do, and I knew how much people were going. I knew the reaction. I was
waiting for this breakdown. I want to hear the legal breakdown of how they did it.
No. It was simple. This is not confusing. And be mad at the profession, be mad at the lawyers, be mad at me. The first thing he did was put George Floyd on trial. And the gas from not just, our audience, from people, from the public was like, oh, how dare you? Really? That's exactly what they did.
You mean by not offering him a plea, putting him on trial?
No. The criminal defense attorney.
Right.
Chauvin. So his job, his first job was, I'm going to put George Floyd on trial.
Oh, okay. I'm with you now. Sorry.
And that's what he did. And we were all, I won't say we, the public was appalled at what he did.
Agreed.
And that's why I stayed away. I didn't want to watch it, didn't watch, because I knew that was about to happen. And I literally had a couple of Road to Damascus conversations with some of my colleagues, because generally police are here and we're always attacking the police, right?
And they never lie.
But what do we do when you're a criminal defense attorney and your client is a police officer who killed a black man?
You attack the victim.
And so when I say we had that Road to Damascus, we were like, Like,
But here's the thing.
side am I supposed to be on? Yeah.
I think the prosecution they knew that was going to happen, and they were so skillful in what they did by humanizing him in the very beginning. They took the sting out of the defense attorney's stinger. They put his girlfriend on the stand, who explained their addiction problems. They explained how every day they were addicts, but they were very functional, that they were never violent. They put his brother on the stand. They put a lot of people on the stand who humanized George Floyd first.
None of that was groundbreaking by any stretch of the imagination.
No, but I do think that bringing his addiction problem out was the way his girlfriend brought it out. I think just kind of hit home for everybody, especially in a time where we have a war on, where we've decided that pill addiction is an illness.
Right.
It's not
so
like
what you're saying is Mike, that the defense, no, the prosecution, by what Stefania's talking about when she's talking about his sister humanizing him, was more of a defense against the attack that the defense was going to have to make.
It was the only term that comes to mind, but it's the one that works. It was a prophylactic. It was being used. It was like, there was no confusion about the playbook. We are going to run off tackle right. And everybody knew what the play was. The defense, the DA, everybody knew. And so and even during the initial, the beginning of the cross-examination of what I saw, you could see them attacking George Floyd. And so you knew, the district attorney was going to make this into, they were going to, the best word you can use is humanize George Floyd. Mm-hmm. But another word you could use was they were going to make him into a saint.
Yeah, and well, okay. So yes, my question was when we're going down this road, we know that they attacked the character of the victim on so many times. It's like to a lay person in the community, it's painful, just like it was when they talked about Trayvon. Just like it was, when they talk about every one of these black bodies, there's always an attack on their character. But, and what makes me feel better about this conversation is you saying, Mike, that it's totally normal that they attack the victim on the defense when they have someone that's completely reprehensible, who has more than likely done something completely horrible.
It's as normal as them attacking the defendant. They are going to bring out the worst possible parts of his character, period. As much as the evidence, as much as the rules of evidence will allow.
Mm-hmm.
But to black people, it's like when women, see a rape case and hearing the defense say she was asking for it, or why was her dress so short. That's how we recoil as a black community. You're saying, well, he had fentanyl in the system. And also, when you overdose from fentanyl, good Lord, what's it look like from a fentanyl overdose? Does it look like a fight? Does it look like a struggle and constant talking? Or does it look like head on chest, eyes can't remain open? Like some things, like I said, you have to be willing to believe your eyes.
And I'm speaking from a medical professional. When we put people on fentanyl patches or anything, they have to be monitored. You hook them up to a monitor because they can stop breathing. They are sleepy and they forget to breathe, basically. They are if you're overdosed on fentanyl, you are not fighting. You're not doing what you saw, right? You're not up and talking and walking and explaining yourself and saying, I'm claustrophobic. Please just don't put me in the back seat. I'll get in the front seat. That is not a fentanyl overdose.
But it wasn't, and I'm trying to be very careful. I'm trying to be, yes. I'm trying to be very careful. It was dehumanizing one to make the other one an angel. And depending on which side you were on, that's what you saw. Both sides were trying to dehumanize the individual on the other side, be it George Floyd or Chauvin. And
but George Floyd was dehumanized when the knee was on his neck. George Floyd was dehumanized when he said, "I'm claustrophobic. I just need to be able to breathe." That didn't mean have 3 officers sit on you and restrict your breathing.
Right.
The issue is that the humanization process needs to start at the initial stop. And I know we're talking about the trial. I know we're talking about the case and this, that, and the other, but at the same time, we're still talking about this concept of law enforcement, public safety, and the outcome is the trial. But what needs to happen before we get the trial is that for you not to have that look on your face, looking like you having pleasure. And I ain't gonna even go into that type of mindset of having your knee on the neck of a black man. Yep. That's the part that I think that's the part that changed the world.
The casuality with that life.
Because it wasn't just Americans looking at this trial. That was an international outcome where people were saying, we want to see how you treat Black America in the United States. Can they receive justice in your criminal justice system while you out here bombing other countries talking about there's injustices there? I'm going to leave it there.
No. Brother Omar is so correct. And which is why I don't like discussing like the logistics and the nuts and bolts of the trial, because the impetus of the trial was that man standing on that man's neck. Period. I know what was going to happen once it got into a courtroom. I know what was going to be outraged. But the impetus, the reason that it got to a courtroom is because there was a bunch of brave bystanders taking pictures. That's the reason we were here.
That's a systemic disease that runs through the veins of the United States of America. You know what I mean? That's like you said, Omar, that's a policing problem. And that is a mentality that has been handed down and is being taught from one class to another of generation after generation after generation of police officers. So the problem, the question is how do we stop this mentality? How do we, we look at, go ahead, Kevin.
I was going to say, Omar, you were talking about it before. Completely different form of policing. It needs to be more community safety based. And honestly, every cop needs to be an EMT. They need to be responsible for making sure that people on this scene come out alive. They should not be just sitting here with a hammer looking for nails. They should also say, "Hey, are you okay? Like we did have to fight. Now let me check your pulse. Let me make sure hey, do you have any heart disease? While I got the cuffs on you, while I'm over here trying to secure the scene, are you having trouble breathing? I'm out of breath. Do you have anything that runs in your family? Step over here. I'm calling backup because they're going to keep an eye on you before we take you to jail for the crime you committed. Even criminals are human beings. People that commit crimes deserve to stay alive after they do it,
But that sounds good. But now our policing policies are already in place. How do you make actual change? How do you change what is already there?
It's what Brother Omar said in the beginning. It's stop dehumanizing the individuals. When you pull up on a police call, the us versus them popping out of it. You got it. The dehumanizing of individuals by the police is what makes it easy to do things to a populace. Because
it's still again, it sounds good, but again, how do you, what are the steps to do that? We know that that's the problem. So now that we already have our police systems in place, our police officers are already hired on, they've given a 10, 20, even the new ones. How do you now go back? Do you go back and vet each one of them and triple vet each one of them? Do you go back and what do you do? How do you stop this mentality?
I think it's well, I'm going to say this right now. I'm sitting on several committees that's looking at the training at the community college level, as well as the post. And different academies are beginning to revamp their training. This is not something that's going to happen overnight. We have to remember this type of policing has been in since its inception.
Yeah.
This is not something that's going to change overnight. Some of these people have been trained by individuals that's had a very unique mindset when it comes to this power of being able to take someone's life, or this power of being able to arrest, or this power to be able to carry the badge. I will say this. I know some phenomenal police officers that's doing it well. The problem is that if a person comes out alive, or if that person used the public safety model first, it doesn't make the news. It doesn't get the press. It doesn't get the notoriety that you need to model this type of public safety or law enforcement, rather than what you're seeing on the TV day in and day out. That's traumatized. That's re-traumatizing our community. I'll end on this because people say, well, the videos are traumatizing. Many of us have lived through the experience, so we don't need the video to traumatize us. That's re-traumatizing us because we were there with the guns in front of us, being stopped for no reason, and wasn't asked, how are we doing? How are you feeling? What's going on? It was name and badge. Do you know why I stopped you? No, officer. Well, you're going to figure it out after you get this citation. Right. Whatever happened to good customer service?
Here's the scariest thing. You're right. I have witnessed that myself. And the scariest question that you can ever be asked on the initial stop of a police officer is this your car? Oh, I'm sorry.
Lord.
Oh, jeez.
Is this your car? Yes, it is my car.
Yeah, it's my car.
I mean,
But also, what they even said it to the soldier. You're going to ride the lightning. You should be afraid.
Right? You should.
They told them themselves.
The most egregious part of that conversation was when he told that man he was going to ride the lightning. That man.
What do I do now?
He still had his military bearing.
Yeah.
I mean, that alone, when an officer, like even when we, as we are in the situation where we're in, you still have a conversation with another individual, a semi-respect, something. But when an officer tells you you're about to ride the lightning in a civilized society, what would you do? How would you react? How do you? It's over. Whatever mores, whatever we decided our society is based on. You just told me I'm about to ride the lightning.
Yeah.
What they don't talk about is how much strategy went into that interaction by that veteran. What they don't talk about, he had to sit here and think, okay, their gun is out. I've done nothing. They see my hands. They did not reholster. He said, you're going to ride the lightning and you should be afraid. Mm-hmm. Should I remotely reach into this vehicle? He's like, no, if he can't see my hands, he's got an excuse to shoot. If I get out, he has a way to shoot. He can say I'm struggling or I'm resisting. I've had this situation. I got pulled over during a hurricane. We had evacuated to Louisiana, and they had a hurricane the week before. So their lights were out on the pathway between Houston and Louisiana, right? So I went out there for a few days, and then they said, hey, we're going back to work. Come back. It's just good money or whatever. So I left the family there, and I'm coming back, and I was speeding, okay? So I get pulled over in this area. The region has no lights, and y'all know how country dark is. It is black outside, right? It's black outside. Right. So I'm on the freeway, and there's an exit that goes up to a little podunk town, and there's nothing up there, and it's pitch black. The cop gets behind me, and he follows me, and right when I got to that exit, he turns his lights on. And I looked up there. I'm like, nope, not me, not tonight. And I pulled over right past that exit, and he said, why did you stop on the side of the freeway? I was like, sir, it looked very dangerous up there. I don't feel safe going up there. I didn't want to be alone in the dark being pulled over. He starts yelling at me. He's like, well, you got me on the side of the freeway. I could get hit by a car. And I was like, officer, if you'd like me to pull over to somewhere safer, feel free. You can follow me and all that. And he's yelling. He didn't pull his gun out on me. But it's all this strategy that has to go into it. Am I going to die if I do this? Am I going to die if I do that? And, and I could have got sprayed or whatever. And Omar, you have your situations as well. like you have to think and think and think and think and think just because you're in this skin, just off the rip, just because of the skin.
That's amazing how we have to have a different mentality. Sorry, Omar, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Stefania, please, go ahead.
Look, I that's all I wanted to say. We have to have those extra checks and balances within our own head before we can really be comfortable, or even we don't even make it to a comfort level. We just realize that we have to do something so that this police officer feels comfortable about us. But go ahead, Omar.
I was just going to say, you know, I take Kevin, what Kevin just said, and think about that officer had came and said, hey, you pulled over on the side of the road. Is everything okay? Do you need help? You know, I was following you. I just want to make sure everything's okay. By the way,
I got you going over the speed limit. What's up? You missed the exit. Are you okay?
Yeah. I mean, and that's how we need to approach things. But until, and I know I'm gonna sound like a broken record to those that are listening, but I've been on the other side where I've had several guns pulled on me by law enforcement, and several different times, not just one time, but several different times. Mm-hmm. So, you know, and one of them was in front of my mother the day I graduated from college. The other was in front of my stepmother just following her home. So can you imagine the trauma they were going through saying, hey, is my son going to get out of this alive? And many of these stops don't even need to happen. With the technology we have today, mail the person a citation, especially if you know you're a hothead and got a bad attitude. There's some officers out there doing it right. Some officers do not need to engage the public. Put them in there in the evidence room somewhere, but get them off the streets.
And they know that
go ahead, Mike.
The officers, and this is way back when we were talking about that thin blue line. The other officers know who that is. Mm-hmm. And you, as a member of the public, have no clue who's hothead, who's cool, who's. The other officers know exactly who it is, and they will back that officer up till the end.
See, that's it.
But real quick, and I hope we have our producer to put this up there. Remember, they put out a statement. There's a statement before the videotape came out about the videos came out about George Floyd. Before there was a statement, the official statement. It was basically individual was detained. He was being detained for passing fake coin or fake money. He was detained while he was in police custody. He passed away. No drugs or no weapons were used. Like it's about a 4-line statement. That is the complete and total what happened with George Floyd if nobody had a camera.
Yeah. See, and that's why I say there needs to be policy in place, because they're not going to police themselves and they're not going to police each other. And when you see you would think that they would get tired of losing their jobs and being prosecuted for other people. You would think that would cross somebody else's mind who, when you're the third person kneeling on somebody's, holding their legs down while somebody's kneeling on their neck, you would say, I'm not losing my job for you. I have a family fee. The police chief who in the Dante Wright incident, the police chief had to step down because he immediately took his police officer's side and said, I believe she was making a mistake. When would he think and say, I'm not backing this? I need to have more evidence. I need to see ask a few more questions. But to immediately say, I think she made a mistake, knowing that those are two different weapons that carry two different weights that are on two very different sides, dominant hand, non-dominant hand. You would think that they would stop wanting to lose their jobs over somebody else acting reckless. And that's why I say, Omar, there needs to be a policy in place because they're not going to police themselves. And there needs to be several policies that back each other up. You know what I mean? Like in the operating room, we can be sued. They can sue everybody in the room. If something goes wrong, everybody in the room can be sued for the mistake of one person. So we kind of police each other. There was a time that I was doing a surgery. I was in there on a surgery where the surgeon wasn't in the room yet, but the surgical assistant was in there, and he wanted to make the initial cut. Now, the policy is that he can do that as long as his surgeon is at least at the scrub sink scrubbing his hands, so that if something goes wrong, the surgeon is immediately able to come in and help his surgical assistant. The surgeon wasn't even in the room. The surgeon wasn't even at the scrub sink. The surgeon was on the floor making rounds when his surgical assistant is asking me for the knife to make the surgical incision. And of course I said, no, I'm not giving you the knife. You're not going to take me down if you hit an artery on your way in. I'm not going down with you. And the anesthesiologist finally piped up and said, yeah, you can't do that. But we have to back each other. And so if there's something in place that says, number one, you have to be responsible for your fellow officers. And number two, if you have to carry insurance, the insurance is another way that helps weed out those bad apples. How many incidents can you have before your insurance carrier says, we can't cover you?
Well, I completely agree. What happened because the plaintiff's lawyers started suing everybody in that medical operating room. Everybody got sued.
Everybody, right down to.
And so it became accountability and interaction because they knew that. Mm-hmm. Officers don't have that on the other side.
They need
it. They are immune to many levels of prosecution and up to and including the civil side, which is what I believe happened regarding insurance and operating rooms. Is the plaintiff lawyers got a hold of everybody in that room and been like, whoa, we're going to do this right because I'm not getting sued. Officers I don't believe they have that level of accountability from the civil side.
I think we're seeing more police chiefs monitor their words. You're seeing some of them. I mean, we have to think about another precedent that was made in this trial. You have police chiefs and other police officers and other law enforcement officers just straight up say, no, this was wrong. We taught this in the academy. We don't know where he got this from, but this, and I think you're going to see more of that, but we have to also think about this mindset with the media. What's one of the longest running shows that we have? Law and Order SVU. They abuse the rights of people every single show. You think about it. And these are the longest running shows. Criminal Minds, they're in there beating the crap out of the person to figure out where the bodies are at. And we celebrate this, we fall asleep on it, and we watch it. Some of these shows have been on for 14, 15 years. I would honestly believe that some of these officers probably watch these shows and says, I want to be a law enforcement officer like that. Yeah. I want to go out there and exert my power. I want to go out there and be that character I see on TV. And we have to begin to think, what is our media telling us about policing and law enforcement as well? Because a good show is not going to get ratings if you sage everyone with a smile on your face.
You were hitting on the Shield. Go look at a rerun of the Shield or a rerun of NYPD Blue. It's like there is not at least every episode somebody, probably a person of color, is getting the crap beat out of them, and in the end we get the bad guy. But remember, in order to get the bad guy, we had to beat the crap out of a person of color.
They used to make. Go ahead, Omar.
You're right.
No, go ahead, Stefania. I'm sorry.
I mean, I've talked to so many people who have filed reports against police officers, and they just end up in the circular file. Like it doesn't matter. Police officers with 14 and 15 complaints against them of police brutality, and it goes nowhere. So how do you, like I said, how do you police that? How do you enforce that? But the police chiefs that's a start. But then when it's too big for him to handle, and he's not going to be honest about his own police officers, he knows which ones are the rogue police officers. What do you do? What's the next step?
I think you're going to see those officers being held more accountable, especially with 217, especially with the federal level, thinking about addressing qualified immunity and things of this nature. When your family's expenses are on the line and your wife is looking at you or your husband looking at you saying, oh, you're going to back this person up and they did wrong, and
right,
it can impact us as a family.
Yep.
I think you're going to begin to see people come out and say, I don't want to ride with this person. I don't want to be a partner with this person. Give me someone that's not going to put me in jeopardy because I enjoy being a peace officer. Not a police officer, but a peace officer.
Yeah. Yeah.
I see somebody talking about culture. Policy is one thing. Culture is totally something else.
100%.
100%.
I think they're doing. Based on I saw a comment. I know I was going to say. I think they're doing a reboot of Cops. Sorry,
Lucy.
Sorry, Lucy.
But let me. Can I change? Can I change the topic for a minute with your permission?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
What is our community responsibility when it comes to law enforcement and keeping the peace?
I say utilize all your resources. One, be that courageous young lady with that phone, and don't step back. Don't stop recording. Don't feel bad and turn it off. You know, be brave enough. You know, because it takes bravery to buck the system, right? We're afraid sometimes. I'm afraid, you know, because I'm huge. I don't want to get shot, right? So if I see a black man or I see anybody being abused by the police, I'm going to be afraid when that cop says, "Hey, move over there." Where? Way over there. But like, officer, I'm not in the way. I'm going to record for everybody's sake, right? I need to be as brave as that young lady was to make that recording, right?
Pepperboy has a look on his face because he knows exactly what I was talking about.
And I'm not, because I always end up over here. No, we need accountability in our neighborhoods and in our community. And we know it. And we know it. And we know it. But it's easy to throw rocks and stones, but we do need accountability. It's just so hard. Because I teach my children to respect the police because I don't want my children to be shot. But I also know my kids may grow up to be knuckleheads. So how do I deal with that? How do I instill in them a respect for the police, knowing that they might be knuckleheads and I have no control over that? I know I have no control over that interaction when my grown child meets that police officer with a gun. Like, what do I do? What do I do at this point right now? I raise him to be respectful. I raise him to, he is respectful. But what do you get into a situation like we were talking about earlier where the cop says ride the lightning? How do you raise a child in that environment?
But this is my point. My point is that one of the ways to reduce the negative interactions with law enforcement is to not have to have them be called, period. Part of that, and I'm not talking about no snitching. What I'm talking about is at the same rate I'm watching these videos of police officers abusing our community, I'm also watching thousands of hits of bullies attacking each other, gangs attacking each other, people cheering while a young lady while young ladies are fighting and things of this nature. The police are going to get called. And when the police come, we can't predict what the outcome is going to be. So we already seen several situations like that. How do we begin in our community to make sure we are protecting and watching out and loving each other? That's what and those are conversations that, as president of NAACP, people be like, "Oh my, don't bring that up. We're going to speak with the issue." But when the mother come to you and say, "I've lost 2 kids to gun violence,"
how do I?
And they come to you as NAACP president, what are you going to do about violence? You got to have the response for that mother.
I think, you know what, I want to piggyback off of Becca Clark-Sleever. She said white community so responsible, and that kind of ties into what you're saying, Omar, and it starts from the top down. When that call is made, the 911 operator reporting the call and choosing who to call at that point in time. If we break off policing and we have mental health as an option to call, if we have a fire and rescue as an option to call, and policing as an option to call, and then call the policing in properly. It's a gun it's a knife on the scene. It's a knife. You don't need your gun. Perhaps a taser for a 16-year-old. You know what I mean? But I think the main thing is we need to stop weaponizing Black color. When for instance, Elijah McClain, why was that handled the way it was handled? There were so many missteps along that way.
That was horrible.
It was horrible.
From the time that officer got out the car.
Yeah.
When
the young man
was
called,
when he got out the car. But my argument is, or back it up. My question is, what? And this is where I thought Omar was going, and I think that's where he was. What about when the officer, Elijah McClain, that officer was wrong when he got out of the car. He was wrong when he made contact. He was wrong from the start to the finish. Whatever. What about the incident where the officer gets out of the car and someone is being attacked? What should the officer do realistically? What do you want that officer to do?
Assess the situation first.
Okay, that person's about to get stabbed.
Here's the thing: we know that they can show restraint. We know that they can show restraint. We've seen it with them. If that was a white person and they rolled up on a white person with a knife, I've seen where they took the knife away with the officer not even having a gun in hand. He approached that man with no weapon. So there's a taser, that's an option. There's talking to the people, that's an option. There were so many other things that were not, but 4 shots to the chest for a 16-year-old.
Anybody else?
And they're trained to mag dump too. So he violated policy. He's supposed to mag dump. I mean, look, the policies need to be different.
Somebody with a knife. The person is about to stab another person with a knife. What do you want your officer to do? That's
you can run up there with that baton and that bulletproof vest and all that backup that you called. As you assessed the situation, you saw that it was dangerous, and you can put your body between them.
You can really use a taser.
And there's a cop right here. Am I going to stab this person right on a cop? And this cop is grabbing me now. And at that point, sometimes you have to think about how. Okay, we made the analogy. Someone is breaking into your house. You have a gun with a 100-round drum. You can unload 100 rounds into them, or you could cock it. You could point it at them. You can say, "Hey, get out of here! I have a gun." You can use the ultimate force, or you can use an appropriate force. So I think if someone's about to stab someone, I would think using a gun is on the highest edge of how much force that can be used to stop that situation. But there's a million different opportunities to not kill someone, to stop that attack.
But let's break something down. If we're alluding to the young lady that was shot with the knife, if I heard the reports correctly, and I want to put that out there, she was the one that called the police and said, "I'm being bullied."
Yes, yes.
And said, "I need help." She was calling her parents. She was calling her mom. She was calling everyone saying, "Hey, I'm being bullied." I want to know, prior to this incident, how many times has she probably complained to the correct people and nothing was done? This is the part where I say, how do we even prevent having law enforcement even have to come to the community if we could begin to resolve issues and not stand there with a cell phone and begin to cheer what is taking place? And I'm not just talking about Black communities. White communities do it. Our Latinx communities do it. Our API communities do it. But we invite these people coming into the situation when we're not policing ourselves, protecting ourselves, or loving ourselves.
There's two kind of where we have like two separate categories. There is the officer making contact with an individual randomly, right? That is us out driving around. We get pulled over. That's one situation we have no control over. And then there's the situation in which we invite the officer. And when I say invite, call, contact, "Hey, I need you to come here." An officer comes to a situation, and it's scary to say it, but what do you think is going to happen? And we have different thoughts on this based on race. What do you think is going to happen when a police officer shows up at your house? right?
Yeah.
And
that's what,
based on that, based on what you've done, when an officer shows up, you no longer have control of the situation, period. Yep. Even if you're the one who called it. Mm-hmm. You no longer have control of the situation. You've now invited the government into your home. You no longer have control of the situation, period. You call the police when you need them, but understand you do not have control of the situation when they show up.
Okay, speaking of government,
go ahead.
Speaking of government, let's go bigger picture, because I feel like that's what Omar was alluding to, and I wanted to leave it open a little bit. But we have to stop leaving humans, our fellow brother, sister, and family, in such desperate situations where so many horrible things are happening. The most physical attacks happen in a relationship when there's money. The most divorces happen when there's money problems. The most divorces happen over arguments and everything over money. If there wasn't so much scarcity, and I believe it is synthetic scarcity, to create demand for people's capitalistic gain, if we could stop creating poverty, I believe we create poverty in this nation. If we stop creating poverty in these neighborhoods and targeting it to the lower scales, the lower echelons of who you want to take care of, such as your Black, brown, and indigenous communities, then you won't be seeing us make desperate decisions. You also see us under less tension and constant stress to break down and make bad decisions, just objectively speaking, or self-medicate because your existence is under so much stress and you're under constant pressure. If you have to work 3 jobs and you can barely pay your bills, of course you're not able to sit down and read to your kid. Of course their grades suffer. Of course you can't go to your faith community and get that support. You're at your 3rd job on Sunday. So you don't get that out. Of course you don't go to your therapist because you can't afford the copay. You work 3 jobs. You don't work 3 jobs because you just like working all the time, and you're on edge. So whenever whatever happens hits the fan, you're going to be the one that makes that bad decision, more likely than not. It's so much easier to make that bad decision when you're under all this pressure. So we have to think about it. When someone makes the minimum wage, how low should that minimum wage be? How much should a 1-bedroom apartment cost compared to the average income in the area? If I work a job with dignity, if I go to work for 40 hours a week, I should be able to afford a decent place to stay in my city. I should not be subjugated to be basically on Skid Row and have my car broken into every day because everyone around me is suffering desperation at the same rate or worse than me, plus addiction, plus health issues, plus whatever. We have to stop this entire cycle. It's not just when someone breaks a law, because they broke a law for a reason. They didn't just wake up and say, you know what, I feel like stealing cars. More likely than not, they didn't just wake up and say, I want to steal a car. They're like, I want to hit a lick because I need this money right now.
Kevin, I'm going to push back just a little bit.
Go ahead, hit me.
And I'm going to push back on my good friend Paperboy when he said we need the police to live in the community. So that means, so let me understand this. I live in Aurora, so when I go to Denver, I should act a fool? No, just treat me like a human being 24/7. Treat me like a human being every day of the week. Kevin, I'm sorry. Poverty, I understand we broke. I understand sometimes we're struggling, but still you can say good morning, how you doing, what life is like, how can we help get each other out this struggle? Kevin,
ahead, Omar.
This is my point. This is my point. My point is that we stay in a society that glorify the mindset of violence, period.
That's true.
And it doesn't matter your economic. Now, some people gonna steal because they hungry. That's a crime of survival. But you can still steal the food and run by me and say, "Excuse me, how you doing? Good morning," all that great stuff. We have to change our mindset and learn how to love each other. How we go to church every single Sunday and then want to squab about where you sit at in church. We gotta begin to change our mindset and love each other.
I think you're like, I think everybody's we've changed the whole narrative, and we forgot that what we're talking about is a policing problem in this nation. And the police, To me, even if we call them, even if we're having an issue with not making our ends meet for food and for whatever you said, Kevin, we're having a mental breakdown. When we call the police, why are they incapable of assessing the situation first without pulling their weapon when it comes to people of color? Assessment should be the first thing that they do,
regardless of where they live.
Regardless.
Real quick, Brother Omar, just real quick. Because what I mean by citizen soldier is the reason they can't assess because they don't know anybody involved. When I say a citizen soldier, when they're in the community, if I call you,
makes sense,
Brother Omar, to come, me, Kevin, and Stefania, Sister Gallegos have gotten into an argument, blah, blah, blah. I call you, you come over, you're like, all right, everybody calm down. You know, everybody involved, and you can, but if I call the cops, if I call the police, and they show up, and all of a sudden, Paperboy is no more because the police don't know what's going on, voices are raised, that changes when it's the citizen soldier, when the citizen is the policeman, when he's living in the community. He can look at you, be like, no. That's Brother Omar. That's Sister Gallegos.
Let me push back, Mike. Let me push back on you, Mike, because you said citizen soldier, so you made me think about soldiers. All right? You're a veteran. Rules of engagement.
See, when it's a citizen soldier, there is no.
I know.
We're not an army. I live there.
I know. I get it.
Go ahead.
And I'm not going against your analogy. I agree with your analogy. I mean, and I think Omar is arguing about how pragmatic it is, right?
No, I'm going to say this. The problem is he called a police officer instead of a peace officer. If he called a peace officer, it probably would have been a different circumstance. He called the police officer, and when the police officer came, that's what he did. He was taught how to police. He wasn't taught how to be a peace officer. She wasn't taught how to be a peace officer. You call Omar is coming with peace. How do we resolve it in peace?
I agree.
I agree with Lucy. It's a matter of choice. And Lucy said that they are able to go above and beyond when they are trying to disarm heavily armed white people, and that is because they assess the situation differently, and that assessment skill has got to be there.
That's their rules of engagement. They know no matter what, I do not kill this white person. I get it. They just shot up this movie theater. I get it. They just shot up that church. Right. I get it. They just shot that school. But we're gonna take them alive. I get it. I'm in Afghanistan, and the Taliban is surrounding me. But I'm going to make sure I do not fire a bullet. I know my best friend just stepped on a landmine and his leg is gone. He's done so, right? But I'm not going to shoot them because I'll be court-martialed. I'll go to the brig or whatever they call it. Look, I'm not in the military, but you know what I'm saying. They know all this stuff is going to happen to them.
What we're talking about is the humanization of the individual, and the easiest way for us to be human. I know we want these police officers to take classes and go through all this sensitivity training. The easiest way for them to humanize the people in the community is to be a part and live within the community. That's what I mean by citizen soldier. And I will no longer call them police officers. I will call them peace officers.
I'm sorry, Stefania, go ahead.
I disagree with you, Michael. I think they have to be forced into it. They're not, until you hold their feet to the fire and say, listen, you got to do this or you're going to lose your job. And you got to hold this. There's got to be some policies in place that police them when no one else will police them.
Are you at the beach?
I got to say this. Call them peace officers if they're a real peace officer. That's all I got to say. Call them peace officers if they're a real peace officer. Last but not least, how do we humanize each other? Today, I had a great luncheon with our API community, although I couldn't eat because I'm fasting. We had our African-American community, our API community, humanizing and loving each other. We just need to do that more in our communities, even with our peace officers.
Yeah. So much needs to be done.
And I don't want to just call them a peace officer. I want them to be a peace officer.
That's my point.
If you're a policeman working, or if you're a member of the police force right now working, become a peace officer if you aren't one already. That'll help stop this problem. And that's my dope black thought for the day. Boom.
Boom.
Wait. Before we do, University of New Mexico is playing the University of Navy in women's soccer. Go Lobos! There.
Oh my
All
goodness.
right.
Here's a thought for you, Michael. It came up again. It came up again. Is
What?
Bobby Brown the king of R&B?
Bobby Brown.
That's what
Y'all just, you know what happens is,
Jermaine Dupri brought it back up. So that's my dope black thought. Everybody needs to think about that. Who would you name? Mine would not be Bobby
Are
Brown.
we talking about groups or individuals?
The king, one king of R&B.
One king of R&B.
Jermaine Dupri dropped it again, and he says he thinks it is Bobby Brown. I disagree with
Oh,
that.
I
I think
disagree as well.
there's
Babyface.
Luther Vandross. There's so many people that
Vandross. Ooh, see you crossing over. Ah!
You need eras. You do need eras, though.
eras.
Bobby Brown. I'm talking about people that had hits. I'm talking about people that had sustainability. Bobby Brown had an era, and there was a very short era. Some of these other people's music transitioned several different generations.
He
Yeah.
married-
Not my biggest. I'm not the biggest fan, but Babyface.
he
Gotta be
married-
Babyface.
oh, there it is. There it is. There it is.
Yeah, Omar, you didn't name anybody. Who would you name?
You said Lionel Richie. Omar's
No,
out.
no.
You said
What I
Lionel
said
Richie.
is, I would put time out. I said I put Lionel Richie ahead of Bobby Brown.
No,
I didn't
I
say Lionel Richie was the king.
Omar loses his vote because he said Lionel Richie.
Yeah, I agree. Vote taken.
Lionel Richie was an icon. Was an icon.
You heard exactly what I said.
Icon
Putting the
is,
spin on it.
but he ain't the king of the R&B.
Hey,
I would push back.
Lionel Richie is ahead of Bobby Brown. That's all I gotta say.
Yeah, he is.
He's
Every
ahead
little
of
step you take, you're more and more correct, Omar.
He's ahead of Lauryn Hill. Cue the music.
A-D-D-I-C-T-E-D. What is love? It's a drug. Let it rotate, then get back in it. Calling me an Uber just to get back in it. Use the cash out like pay, I spend it. Is it really worth the wait? I don't get it. Divide and gravitate. Taste that wet emoji got me higher out of space.